Welcome to Pine Haven Homestead. I am so glad you're here today. It's been a while since we've been in the kitchen together. Things look a little bit different, but today we are going to be doing a no stress, stress-free sourdough for the lazy and or busy mom, homesteader, family person, life, whatever. Okay, so this is like super low-key sourdough bread that continues to perform time and time and time again, and I'm so excited and happy to share it with you. But real quick, last time you guys were in the kitchen, there was a wall and a refrigerator where the camera is. So we actually totally kind of changed the layout of the kitchen without actually moving very much of anything. So we used to walk in over here. We've got the kitchen sink over here, the dishwasher, the stove, oven, fake microwave, and then some cabinets over here, a wall, and then we used to have a pretend walk-in pantry, and then the refrigerator. And it just was not very conducive to the way that I like to move around in the kitchen. So we removed the wall and the fake pantry and moved the refrigerator to where the pantry is, but it's oriented open into this direction. And then we have the pantry still along this back wall with shelving and stuff. We have great plans on switching this up and getting some like actual cabinetry in there, but that hasn't happened yet. It's in the works eventually, but right now this layout of the kitchen works really well, especially with the addition of bringing in this kitchen table. So it has increased our work surface, which has been so key in just all things cooking and in the kitchen that I absolutely love it. But enough of that. Let's get to some sourdough. No matter what, I always start with a clean surface. So even if I cleaned it like 5 minutes ago, I'm gonna clean it again just to make sure, because I'm nuts. Okay, so just a quick spray with some thieves cleaner, a wipe down, and our surface is ready and clean to go. Switch that, rewind, clean and ready to go. Okay, for your sourdough, you're going to need a bowl. You're going to need some active starter. You'll need some flour, salt, and water. So I'm gonna go fill up my water. We use filtered water in here. I have a Berkey, and so let me go fill up my water. Okay, then you'll also need tools. So you have your bowl, and then I use a spatula and a Danish whisk. I think it's called a Danish whisk. This is really, really helpful. If you don't have one, you can definitely just use your spatula, but incorporating this is incredible, and it really makes a huge difference. So we need those, and then we need measuring cups as well. You're gonna need a 1/2 cup measure and a 1 cup measure. Okay, so This recipe is super basic. I absolutely love it. It's pretty much no fail. It only fails when this is not happy. So if this is not very happy, then it does not turn out very well. Kind of more flat, but it still tastes delicious, so you can still eat it. And here's the thing, there is no failing, there's only first attempt in learning. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start off into our bowl. We are going to add half a cup of sourdough starter. I like mine more on the thick side. And so since my sourdough starter tends to be a little bit more on the thick side, I have to add a little bit of extra water to the recipe to kind of account for good hydration ratio. And I like to use both the Danish whisk and the spatula so that I can really clean this out and get it really, really good. Okay. So if you have watched my previous sourdough video, we're basically doing the same recipe. I have just kind of, as the years have gone on, have just kind of honed it in a little bit better. So in the original one, I showed that I used just warm water or hot water out of the sink. We have since graduated to getting a filtration system, a Berkey, and so now I use the Berkey water instead, but you can still use tap water or you can use water straight out of your refrigerator. It does not really matter very much. Okay, so we've got that cleaned out. We have our sourdough starter here in the bowl, and then I take this time to scrape out the starter and kind of just get it all down into the bottom of my feeding jar. There we go. Okay. Then I have about 1.5 cups. This is closer to 1.5 cups of water, which is probably going to be just fine because that starter was really sticky and thick. So we're just going to use our whisk to mix in the starter, to incorporate the starter in the water really, really well. Okay, now set that aside because we are going to feed our starter. Anytime you take from the starter, you feed the starter. So I took 1/2 cup of starter out of here. So I'm going to roughly measure with my clean 1 cup, because I did a 1/2 cup and it's all dirty. With my clean 1 cup measure, I'm going to measure about roughly 1/2 cup and then toss it on into my starter jar. And then I'm going to go get a little bit more water. So roughly 1/2 cup of flour to 1/4 cup of water. You can always readjust those measurements as necessary. So then we're going to just take this and mix it all up. Here, let me come close so you guys can see what it looks like on the inside. Okay, so what you're doing here is you're mixing this really, really well so that you're incorporating all of that dry flour and making sure that it is getting hydrated with the water. So this is still a little thick, so I need to add a little bit more water. Just a tad, just a little bit. And then we'll go ahead and get that all mixed in. I like using the spatula inside my feeding jar because I can really scrape the sides really well and make sure that I'm getting everything incorporated and trying to keep the jar as relatively clean as possible. There we go. And then go ahead and wipe off any extra little dough with the spatula. And I'll bring it over and show you guys what it looks like. Okay, set that aside. Okay, there we go. That is what a brand new fed starter looks like. Okay, so return the lid, clamp it shut, put it to the side. I am going to take this time now to clean these utensils. while that starter and water is kind of combining and meeting each other. So I'll be right back. Okay, let's bring it back. So there we go, give it another good mix. And then this is where I like to add the salt. It's about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I have a cute little spoon that's used for, it's actually a baby spoon. And I just roughly figured out about how much 1.5 teaspoons is. You can eyeball it, or you can be like super scientific and go get yourself a 1/2 teaspoon measure and measure 1.5 teaspoons. But like I said, this is like the lazy girl sourdough. No fuss, no muss, lots of mess. So give that a good stir, get that all incorporated. I like to add the salt at this point so that it can get all incorporated, all in there, and you won't find little salt pockets potentially in your bread. Okay. So now let's recap. We have 1/2 cup of starter, 1 1/3 cups of water, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and now we're gonna add 3 cups of flour. And again, lazy girl. I'm not like fully on measuring this. That's about 1 cup. So we'll add that in. That's about 1 cup. So that's 2 cups. And then 3 cups. There we go. Set that aside. Move that out of the way. And then this is the beauty of the Danish whisk, is that you just kind of spin it around and kind of whisk a little bit. And because it's got those large holes in there, it allows the flour to get incorporated in with the wet mixture, and you just mix it all up. And so your goal here is to get all of the flour incorporated with the wet ingredients so that everything gets hydrated. And that is what we're doing here. Okay, it is all incorporated in there. Let's take a look at it. There we go. Okay, no dry flour to be seen. I mean, except for maybe kind of stuck to the sides of the bowl, but that's okay. That is okay. All right, so just one final pass through here. Make sure everything at the bottom is all incorporated, which it is. And then just go ahead and get this off of there. Trying to keep as much of the dough in here as possible. Okay. Thing off of there. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna wash my whisk. It's all incorporated. I washed my whisk. I washed all the things that I needed to. And then the next item that you are going to need is a kitchen towel of sorts. You're gonna go over the top of your bowl, cover it up and set it aside. So now what we do is we find something else to do for 30 minutes. So we're gonna let it sit for 30 minutes so that the hydration can kind of get all in there, and the yeasts in the sourdough starter can start working and start getting some bubbles and kind of getting this process started, because we added all of that food in there and some water. And so now that yeast that was present in the starter is gonna start feeding on all of that new food and water that we just added into there. So go find something to do for 30 minutes and then I'll meet you back here. Just kidding. It's gonna be like half a second for you. Actually, I thought I would chat for just a second and talk to you why I love this recipe so much. I love it because you really don't need any fancy tools or anything for this recipe. You don't need a scale. You don't need that Danish whisk. You can use a spatula and a bowl. The only fancy materials that you are going to need is going to be a Dutch oven of sorts and maybe a proofing basket. That's it. But even not a proofing basket, because you can just use some flour on a towel and use another bowl and you're good to go. But anyways, we're still letting that thing sit for about 25 minutes, and then I'll tell you what the next step is. All right, now it is time for the stretch and fold. First, I go into the sink and I get my hands wet, because it helps make the dough less sticky. And then we just pull up and fold over as we turn the bowl around. Continue doing this stretch and fold over until the dough becomes a little bit tough. Started to get a little too sticky, so I went and got some more water on my hands, and I'm going to start doing some more stretch and folding. Sometimes using two hands helps as well. Remember, do what works best for you. This is the lazy girl bread. Now that we've completed our stretch and fold, go ahead and cover with a towel and set aside for 8 to 12 hours. It's been about 12 hours. The dough has risen beautifully. So now we're just going to scrape it out onto our workbench. I put down some flour and just using a dough scraper to get it all out of the bowl. And then once I get it out of the bowl, I'm going to knead it slightly and then get it shaped. I have found it really helpful to use the dough scraper with the initial kneading and folding over, just to make sure that the dough is not sticking to the benchwork surface. And then I can use my hands to roll it over and fold it over. And then I roll it into a log and then into another log. And the goal here is to make the surface of the dough really tight. So we're going ahead and kind of stretching the dough around to the underside. And now we're going to cover it with a bowl for about 15 minutes to let it rest. And we'll take this time to coat our Banneton basket, our proofing basket, with some flour. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes. We're going to go ahead and make sure we tighten the surface of the dough again by pulling slightly on the workbench and letting it kind of roll under. And then we're going to flip the bread upside down and lay it into our Banneton basket, cover it with a cover, and set it aside. At this point, you have two options. You can put it for 2 hours on the counter or up to 12 hours into the refrigerator. I prefer to put it in the refrigerator. And then after that 12 hours, you're going to preheat your oven to 450 degrees with your Dutch oven in the oven heating up. Then you're going to dump out your bread, score it, and then bring out your Dutch oven from the hot oven to place your loaf into. You're going to cover it with the lid for 30 minutes at the 450 degrees. And then after the 30 minutes, you'll take off the lid and bake for an additional 20 minutes. Okay, it's been 30 minutes in the oven with the lid on. So we're going to go ahead and take that lid off and then bake for an additional 20 minutes.
Oh, we just finished this part.
Nice. Here we are at the end after a total of 50 minutes of baking to pull out our beautiful loaf of bread. Look at how gorgeous that is. Absolutely stunning. Let it sit for 30 minutes at least to cool down, and then you're welcome to go ahead and start slicing. Absolutely beautiful. Enjoy your delicious bread.